Hello friends, welcome back or welcome to my channel if you are new here. My name is Elena. I love all things makeup and beauty. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing an eyeshadow collection and declutter. So if you like that kind of content, then definitely keep on watching. So I have over 60 palettes, which is quite a bit. So this declutter, I'm really hoping to be ruthless just because since my channel is growing, I have a lot of new palettes I really want and I don't have that much space. So we're just hoping that I can declutter quite a bit. I don't know for sure how much I'm decluttering, but I do need to make space. As I said, my channel is growing. I have a bunch of eyeshadow palettes, newer eyeshadow palettes that I really want. So let's go ahead and get started. So first category we're going to start is with palettes that I only have one from one brand. And the first one is from Phase Zero. And this is what the palette looks like. Very beautiful. I have not actually used this palette yet. And with that being said, I think this is going to be the first one that we're going to go ahead and declutter. I got it from BoxyCharm, and it's not that I don't think it's bad. Like, the color story is beautiful, but I just have not used it. I don't really know why I haven't used it. But since I have not used it, and I've had this for about 2 years now, I think we're going to go ahead and just declutter this. Then we have from Ciate London the Olive palette, and this is what the palette looks like. The palette is pretty beautiful, and the quality overall is mostly good, but the mattes I'm not in love with, and I don't really use this palette either, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one also. But I do really like this green. It did come in broken, but it's all right. The shimmers are nice. I'm not going to lie. I love the shimmers. I feel like the shimmers are really good quality, but the mattes are just a little patchy. And to be honest with you, the mattes don't really match the color story. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and declutter them. We have the Ofra palette. It is a Symphony palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Super beautiful. This is amazing quality. This is the only Ofra palette I have. And I do want to pick up more just because I really enjoy this palette. I did get it from BoxyCharm and I really just like this. The quality is super good. I'm definitely going to be keeping this. The mattes are really nice. We do have a really beautiful shimmer right here, but it is also a highlighter. And I've heard really good things about the brand Ofra. So I definitely want to pick up some other things like highlighters. I've heard those are really nice. But I just really like this palette. So this palette is not going to go anywhere. We have Nomad Cosmetics, the Earth palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Super beautiful. I love this color story. It is grungy and I love grungy color stories. The quality of this is actually really nice. I've heard that Melt is a hit or miss with some of their palettes. I do want to pick up the new Smoke Sessions 2 palette. That is on my list of new palettes that I want to pick up. But I really like the quality of this. I love the color story. And this gold right here is super, super beautiful. It is stunning on the eyes. I love this green and yellow also. These combine very well together. This row I really love. Just this whole entire palette is super good. And I have heard good things about this palette particularly. So this is definitely going to be staying in my collection. Next palette we have is the Ciate London the Velvet palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Mine is broken. I dropped it a while ago and a lot of shades shattered. A lot of them chipped off. But I really like the quality of this. I do use it as highlighters and blushes now, so it is in my face palette collection. But overall, I think it's really nice. I was kind of sad that I dropped it just because this is really good quality. The shimmers are outstanding. Like, I feel like Ciate London shimmers are really good. Now, the mattes in here are actually really nice. Other than the other palette that I just showed you, this one is super good. So I'm definitely going to be keeping this, but this is in my face palettes. Then we have the NARS Extreme Effects palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I like this palette. NARS really just comes out with the same color stories. So this is the only palette I do have. And I don't think I'm going to pick up anymore. But the quality of this is super nice. I did get it from Marshall's. So I didn't buy it with the full price. But this is definitely worth it. If they come out with maybe a different color story, I might pick up another palette. Just because I feel like the quality of this is super nice. The shimmers are really nice, the mattes are really nice, and I made such a beautiful look with this palette. I think NARS overall as a brand is super good. I have not used any other products of them, but I feel like I should just because this is really nice, and I've heard really good things about NARS. So this is definitely going to be staying in my collection. Next we have the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe Arm & Gorgeous palette. And I have not used this palette as well, and I'm going to go ahead and declutter this. I've been wanting to try it. I just haven't gotten to it. I don't know why, but since I have not used it, it's taken up space, so we're just going to go ahead and declutter this. I don't think the color story is bad. That's the reason why I did pick it up, is because I love the color story. I can't really say much on the formula just because I have not tried it, but it's really just taking up space, and there really is nothing bad about this palette. I can't really say much, but I'm just going to go ahead and declutter this. Then we have Item Beauty in My Element palette, and this is what the palette looks like. I did hear Item Beauty is going out of business, so I don't know for sure if you can get your hands on this palette anymore. I did get it from BoxyCharm, but I think this is a really nice palette. I love the shimmers. Now, this shimmer is kind of crumbly, so I do have to be careful. But these three other shimmers are really nice. I find the mattes really nice. But I'm not so sure if I want to keep this in my collection. I don't really reach for this palette. The quality is really good, but I'm just not so sure. Like I said, I have over 60 palettes. I have a very limited space, and since my channel is growing, I just want so many new palettes. I can, like, you know, afford to do that. But I don't know. This is probably going to be in a maybe, or it's going to be in a chopping block, because I'm not so sure about this. I just really like the quality, but I just haven't reached for it. So I'm not so sure what I'm going to be doing with this just quite yet. Next palette we have is from Laura Lee, is the Cat Pajamas palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Super stunning, very good quality. But I have not also reached for this palette for a very long time. I did used to reach for this palette. This right here, this row, these three shades, I would actually use quite a bit. I would make a neutral look just for an everyday wear. But I'm just not so sure. Like, this one is kind of like the same as the Item Beauty one. I don't know what I want to do with it. I like it. I loved using it. I just don't reach for it anymore. And I would hate to let it go and then regret it. But I'm just not so sure. It's going to be probably in the maybe pile also. Then we have this Ace Beaute Serenity palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Super gorgeous. I do have this in my face palettes. I love the quality of this, and I definitely want to pick up more from Ace Beaute. This is definitely going to be staying in my collection. Then we have the Heather Austin and Adept Cosmetics palette. And this is going nowhere. If you know me, this is one of my favorite palettes, especially the shimmers. All 8 shimmers are my favorite shimmers in my whole collection. And I'm just in love with this. The mattes are super nice. The shimmers, as I said, are really good. And Heather did such a good job with this palette. I can never get rid of this, to be honest. And just the duochromes are super pretty. This might be shifting yellow, but it's shifting green for me. And I just really like this. It's not going anywhere. And I do want to pick up more from Adept Cosmetics. The Cyborg palette, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, is the next one that is on my list to purchase. Just Adept did a really good job. Heather did a really good job. And this palette will never go anywhere. And then lastly, from this little category of one-offs is this iconic London Blooming Gleaming eyeshadow palette. And I've actually not used this palette either, and I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. I've been wanting to try it. I just haven't, and it's just taking up space. Also, I just want to let you know before we get too far in the video is all the palettes I'm getting rid of, it's either going to friend or family, or I'm going to go ahead and sell them on my Poshmark, whatever doesn't go towards my friends and family. But please just don't ask for the palettes in the comics section. I don't feel very comfortable with that. As I said, friends and family, and then my Poshmark. I just haven't used this, and I feel like I'm not going to be able to use it. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. I feel like the color story, though, is really nice. I did get it from BoxyCharm, so I didn't actually pay for this palette, per se. But I just haven't used it. And with that being said, I think that I should just go ahead and declutter it. Next category is my Natasha Denona palette. And this is the Alloy palette. And I really love this palette. This palette is not going to go anywhere. I find the quality super good. The mattes are really nice. The shimmers are really nice. Yes, it's a smaller eyeshadow palette, but I don't mind it. It could be easy to travel with. And I just enjoy this palette, to be honest. I did get it from BoxyCharm, so I didn't actually pay for this palette. And I am pretty sure it is only BoxyCharm exclusive. But I just enjoy this palette, so it's not going to go anywhere. Next, we have the Cupid palette from Natasha Denona. And this palette is alright. I find the mattes a little patchy. The shimmers are nice. But I feel like I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. I hate to get rid of it just because I like Natasha Denona, and I don't really want to break up this from my collection, but I think I'm really going to have to get rid of it. Like I said, I'm going to try to be ruthless. I don't know how ruthless I'm going to be, but this palette just didn't perform to my expectations, and because of that, I don't really reach for it, and since I don't reach for it, it's taking up space. So I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter it. I hate to declutter it, but I think that's the right choice at this point. As I said, the quality is alright. Just the mattes were my favorite. And with that being said, I think that's why it's going to go ahead and be decluttered. Next palette we have is the Natasha Denona and Yucca palette. And this is what the palette looks like. This is my favorite palette in my whole collection, so I would not be getting rid of this. Let me tell you, I have used the heck out of this palette. It is super nice. The quality is amazing. The color story, like I knew when she revealed the color story of this palette that I was going to pick it up. I knew it was going to be good, and sure enough, I love this palette. I have a really big dip in this shade, Makeup. I have quite a big dip in this shade. I'm not so sure how to pronounce it. Don't want to butcher it. And the mattes, I have quite a bit of a dip in this one and this one, and I just love this. This is my favorite palette, so this would never be going anywhere. And Natasha Denona did such a good job with this palette. Then we have my retro palette from Natasha Denona. And this is what the palette looks like. This was my favorite palette for a very long time. But the Yucca palette did beat this palette. But let me tell you, I still love this palette. I still use it on a daily basis. And the quality of this is super good. The color story is amazing. There are some other palettes I do want to pick up from Natasha Denona. And I would never be getting rid of this palette. As I said, this was my #1 palette for quite a bit. So this palette is not going to go anywhere. Next category is my Odin's Eye palette. And this is the Floral Story palette in collaboration with Makeup Just for Fun. And this palette is really good. I enjoy this palette. I feel like Makeup Just for Fun did a super good job with this. I love the color story. The quality is really good. I love Odin's Eye quality. I find that they just have really good formulas. And I do want to pick up quite a bit from Odin's Eye. Also, Odin's Eye is quite a bit on my list of palettes I want to pick up. But this is just super good. I love this color, Misty. And this is, Dawn is a duochrome, which is very beautiful. The mattes are super nice. Overall, this palette is just really good. And I love my greens. And this definitely has the greens that I love in it. It even has these purples that I love, and this blue, Lush, is also super good. This palette would never be going anywhere. I'm definitely keeping this in my collection. Next, we have the Stone and Rock palette from Odin's Eye. And this is what the palette looks like. This palette I have used a lot. Let me tell you, this is one of my favorite palettes also, and this would never be going anywhere. This blue right here, let me just swatch it for you. So this blue is a duochrome. It goes teal to a dark blue, and it is super stunning. I'm in love with this. This palette overall just performs amazingly, and I've never had a problem with this palette. I love the color story. I do want to pick up that Jewels and Gems palette, but this palette is not going to go anywhere. We have the little Ghost palette from Odin's Eye, and this was in a collaboration with Angelica Nikovas. And this is what the palette looks like. Really good. I love this palette. I love the color story of this, and I love the quality. Angie did such a good job with this, and there is another palette to this collaboration. And overall, I just find this palette very enjoyable to use. And even with the other palette that I'm going to show you in a second, you can combine those two palettes and make amazing looks. And that next palette I'm talking about is the Trick or Treat palette. And this is what it looks like. This color story is good, but it's not my favorite. I just feel like it's super dark. We do have this light shade, which is called Wicked. And this is the only really light shade we have, minus the screen right here, Poison. But it's not, I don't know. Like, I love this palette, and I won't be getting rid of it. But I just feel like it's a little too dark. But these are the two together. And as I said, when you combine these two, you can make such amazing looks. We have the light shades, then we have the darker shades. I love this shade right here. That's one of my favorite shades, as well as this one. This one is also really good. It is a little bit of more texture to it, but I don't mind. But if you just combine these, you are good to go. I would never be getting rid of these. I love Angie. I love her channel. And these are just super good. And as I said, I just want to congratulate her again. And these are still available on Odin's Eye website. I did just check. I just love these, and I'm going to definitely keeping these. Then we have the Hella palette from Odin's Eye and Angelica Nikovas. And this is the first collab that she did with Odin's Eye. And this palette is not going to go anywhere. This is mostly all greens, and this is like my dream palette. I love these greens. The Venom shade right here is like defined as a green. Like, when somebody asks me what a green shimmer is, I will tell them Venom from the Hella palette is a green shimmer. I really like the purples and pinks in this, and we do have this slightly duochrome. It looks pearly right now, but when you do put it on your eyes, it does shift to a peach color. And overall, the palette is just really good. Angie did such a good job with this also, so I would definitely not be getting rid of this. Lastly, from my Odin's Eye palettes is the Salmon 2 palette, and this is a super beautiful palette. Now, I will tell you, I'm not going to get rid of it, but I have not used this, and I feel like the quality, I've had this for quite a while, so the quality hasn't performed. It still performs good, but not as good as I first got it. I still use it, and I'm not going to get rid of it, but I feel like it's going to go on the chopping block, I think. Like, I just hate to get rid of it just because I love this color story, and I really don't need to get rid of it, but if it's taking up space, it's taking up space. This is gonna be on the chopping block. I don't want to get rid of it. I don't really want to put it in the maybe. I think this is going to go on the chopping block. I'm going to go ahead and use it a couple times, and then I will decide if I really want to get rid of it or not. Next category is my Too Faced palette, and this is Light My Fire. And this is what the palette looks like. I really like this palette. I have not used it in a hot minute, but I still want to keep this. It's super nice for the fall. The quality of this is actually really nice. And overall, I just like this palette, so I'm not going to get rid of it. Next, we have the Natural Nudes palette from Too Faced. And this is what the palette looks like. I'm in love with this palette. This is one of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection. And I did just do a tutorial doing like a easy everyday look with this palette. So if you want to check that out, you can. But the quality of this is super good. Like, this is one of my favorite qualities that Too Faced has done. I have not picked up a Too Faced palette for like quite a while, just because I've heard that the qualities aren't that good. But this palette is really nice. I wish they would bring back the quality of these. I feel like I would buy more from the brand if the quality was like this. I will not be getting rid of this at all. Next, we have the Italian Spritz palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I like this palette. I loved it when I first got it. The shimmers did get a little bit hard pan, but I did find out that if you just really dig your finger in, it's perfectly fine and it works like it did when I first got it. I really love the color story of this. I feel like Too Faced definitely stepped up their game when they did this palette. This palette is such a good palette to use in the summertime. And Too Faced really doesn't do color stories like this. So it was definitely something different that Too Faced did. I'm just really happy I have this palette. And as I said, my shimmers did get hard pan. But if you just dig your finger in it, it worked perfectly fine. So I'm not going to go ahead and get rid of this. Then lastly, from my Too Faced, we have the Cinnamon Swirl palette. And this is what the palette looks like. This is one of my favorite neutral palettes also in my collection. The quality of this is super nice. I feel like this is also one of Too Faced's better quality palettes that they put out. Overall, I just love this palette and I'm not going to get rid of it. Next, we have these E.L.F. Bite Size palettes. We have Acacia U, we have Sugar and Cream, Berry Bad, and Rose Water. And I really like these palettes. They're small, so they're easy to travel with, but I have not used these in a very long time. And I didn't think I was going to get rid of them. But to be honest with you, I think I'm going to. I hate to get rid of them, but I'm just not using them. And I want to get my money's worth. So I want them to go to a good home. I think the only one, if I were to keep them, is the Rose Water one. Because the quality of this was super good. Well, the quality of all of these were really nice. But this one definitely spoke to me. Okay. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and keep Rose Water. The other ones, I can get rid of them. But this one, I just have a feeling that I should keep it just for a little bit longer. I need to use it again, but it is smaller, so it's easy to store. But I just hate to get rid of this one. I just love this one. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just keep this one then. So I did find another pile of one-offs, and this is from Sigma, the Alice in Wonderland palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I am not getting rid of this. I found this palette to be very workable. The quality is really nice. The color story is very beautiful. And I do want to get that cool neutrals palette. That did speak to me also. Now, this is the only palette I have from Sigma just because, one, they're a little pricey. Two, the color stories that they came out with recently weren't my favorite. But the cool neutrals, though, that is on the list of palettes I want to get. I just really enjoyed this palette, so I'm not going to get rid of it. Next, we have the Lorac Pro palette, and it's the Meraki. And this is what the palette looks like. Really nice, amazing quality. I did get it from Marshall's, so I did not pay full price. I am going to go ahead and keep it. I was on the fence, but I'm deciding to keep it. I feel like the quality is just really good. And it's definitely workable to use. And I feel like with this palette, it has deeper tones, medium tones, and lighter tones. And I feel like the shimmers are really nice. And now they're not impactful shimmers, but they're definitely nice on the lid. And if I just want an everyday look, I feel like this palette is super good for that. So I will not be getting rid of this. Next we have from Tarte the Mana Eater After Dark palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I have not used this in quite a while. I found the quality of this to be iffy. So the shimmers, like the ones right here with the embossing in them, are super pretty, super nice. but the mattes I did not really find easy to use. I just don't really know what to do with this palette. I'm gonna probably put it in the maybe pile just because I hate to get rid of it because it was pretty expensive. But the quality just does not perform to my expectations. Okay, so I decided I'm going to put this in the chopping block. I'm going to go ahead, use it one more time, see if I like it. If I don't, I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of it. And then lastly, from the one-offs, we have the Glam Like Cake palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I love the color story of this palette. Now, I did just use it recently, and I did find that the shimmers were a little bit hard pan and hard to work with. I'm thinking it's just because I've had this palette for quite a bit. And I hate to get rid of this palette just because I really like Glamlight and I like to support them. But I think it's time to let this one go. Also, I did have a problem with this purple right here. It did stain my eyes for quite a bit. And I'm just not all for that. I don't really like shadows that stain. So with that being said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and declutter this. Next category is my Nomad palettes. And this is the Feta de Prince palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I really love Nomad. Like, Nomad brand is so good. The stuff they come out with is really nice. Their customer service is really nice. And the brand overall is just amazing. I love this palette. It's so springy. So we have our darker tones, but then we have our lighter tones. And the shimmers are outstanding. This palette would not be going anywhere. And I love this. Next palette we have is the Ghost Town USA palette. And this is what the palette looks like. This is so stunning. This is my favorite palette that Nomad has came out with. The mattes are really good. The shimmers are really good. I will tell you though, about the shimmers is they are a little bit soft pressed. So just be careful when picking them up. I would recommend spraying your brush before you put them on. But I just love this palette and this is not going anywhere. Next category is my BH Cosmetics, and this is the Diamond palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I have actually not really used this palette. The only shade I've used is Diamond, which is this shimmer shade. And I've kept it just because I am born in April, so I am a Diamond. But I don't know. I've kept this palette just for that reason and thinking that I would use it. But I do see this in my collection and I just don't reach for it. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter this. Next palette is the Sugar Cone palette, and it is the Sweet Shop collection. And this is what the palette looks like. A super good neutral palette. I love the shimmers. I love the matte. Now, I don't really use this palette as often, but I find it as a really good palette if I just want one look. These are just super easy to use. You have a crease shade, you have a medium shade, you have a medium darker, and then you have that darker color. And it's just really easy to use. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and keep this. Next palette is the Bubblegum palette. And this is what it looks like. Super stunning. Now, I will tell you, I don't really use the mattes in here. I find the mattes a little bit harder to work with. Not because of the formula, but just because of the colors. But the shimmers are really nice. I'm definitely keeping it for the shimmers. The mattes are really nice quality. But it's just harder to make a look with these. But overall, I just like the palette. So, I'm going to go ahead and keep it. Next palette we have is Smitzer in Switzerland. And this is what it looks like. I like this because it's grungy, but I've come to notice that I don't really use it, and I think I'm going to go ahead and declutter it. I never thought I was going to declutter this palette, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't think the palette is bad at all, and I do like the formula. This is one of the good BH formulas. If you don't know, BH was bought out by Makeup Revolution, and ever since that, I just feel like they haven't really came out with anything good per se. And I would keep this palette just a reminder, but I do have other BH Cosmetics palettes that I am keeping, like the Bubblegum palette. That reminds me of the good formula that they used to have. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and just get rid of this. Next, we have the Avocado Toast palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Super stunning. I really love this palette. I found the formula really easy to work with. The mattes are really nice. The shimmers are really nice. And I really love this color story. So with that being said, I'm not going to get rid of this. I'm going to go ahead and keep it in my collection. Next, we have the Blueberry Muffin palette. And this is what the palette looks like. This was actually one of my first colorful palettes that I purchased. And it definitely has some sentimental value to it. I really do love the quality of this too, so I'm definitely keeping it for that. But this just holds a really special place in my heart. Next category is my Urban Decay palette, and this is the Naked palette, and this is in collaboration with Robin Eisenberg. And this is what the palette looks like. I've had troubles with this palette. I've decluttered it, I've kept it back, I put it back in my collection, I've decluttered it, put it back in my collection, and to be honest with you, I think I'm finally just going to go ahead and declutter it. And I'm being for real this time. I've just had troubles with the color story, I've had troubles with the formula. I'm not saying this is a bad palette at all, but this is definitely not my favorite. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and really just declutter it this time. I have a good reason to declutter it. So with that being said, it's going. Then lastly, from this category, my Urban Decay palettes, we have the Naked Honey. And this is what the palette looks like. This is my favorite neutral palette. So I'm definitely be keeping this. Now, the shimmers are more on the sheer side, but I don't really mind that. Just because this is like a really good everyday wear palette. I find this palette really easy to use, and I did get it from Marshall's, so I did not pay the full price, but I don't regret getting this palette, and I'm definitely going to be keeping it. And then the last category we have is my Colourpop eyeshadow palettes. We have the Your Golden palette, and this is what the palette looks like. Super stunning. This is the only mega palette I do have from Colourpop, and I just really enjoy this palette. I find this palette very easy to work with. It is super nice quality. This pressed glitter right here is not that bad. It's that fine type of pressed glitter, so it's easy to work with. And overall, you just have like all the colors you really need, and I will definitely be keeping this in my collection. Next palette we have is Coast is Clear, and this is what the palette looks like. I love this palette. This was a collection. It was called the Extra Celestial collection. There are two other palettes, but this one is my favorite out of it. I love the mauve tones. The mattes are super good. The shimmers are super nice. We have this Super Shock right here, which is fantastic. And I just really love this palette. So I'm definitely going to be keeping it in my collection. Next, we have Clear the Air, and this is what the palette looks like. So I've been a little bit on the fence with this palette. Like, I want to get rid of this palette because I don't really use it. The color story isn't my favorite, and it's a little bit harder to work with this color story. But the quality is super good. That's just the problem. The color story is the problem, but the quality, really nice. So I don't know for sure. And I would hate to break up the collection. I'm just not so sure. I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is put this on the chopping block. If I don't like it, I'll go ahead and get rid of it. But if I find it maybe a little bit easier to work with. Now, I was starting out with makeup when I first got this collection, so it could be that. But I'm going to go ahead and put it on the chopping block, use it, and then see what my final thoughts are. Then we have Clearly in Love. And I love the color story of this one also. This is my second favorite from that collection. And I feel like Colourpop did such a good job with this palette. We have really nice shimmers, really nice mattes. We have this Super Shock right here. And overall, this palette just performs so well. So I'm definitely keeping this in my collection. Next palette we have is Sage the Day. And I am in love with this palette. I feel like the quality of this is super good. Colourpop did such a good job with this palette. We have really pretty sage colors. The shimmers are nice. The mattes are nice. I really love this color, Tree of Life. And I love the color Retreat Me. This color also super nice. You have a peachy, but this does turn a little bit green also on the lid. And I'm definitely going to be keeping this palette. Next we have Mauve Up. And this is what the palette looks like. I really like this palette. I find the quality actually pretty nice. Now, these are Target exclusive palettes. I have another one called Fresh Greens. So you can only get these at Target. But as a Target, I feel like it's really good quality. I really like the mattes. I love the shimmers. The color story is really good. And I'm definitely going to be keeping this in my collection. Next, we have the Colourpop and Mandalorian The Child palette. And this is what the palette looks like. Really nice. I've been wanting this palette for some time. I love the Mandalorian series. Now, the only thing that I'm a little bit disappointed about is this shade and this shade came in broken. I was able to press it back, so not a big deal. But the quality I really like. The color story is really nice. I just found it disappointing that they came in broken, but it's not a big deal. It doesn't really, deter me from using this. And I just really like this, so I'm definitely going to keep it in my collection. Next, we have Fresh Greens, and this palette is super stunning. This is one of my favorite green palettes, and this is also just a Target exclusive, but the quality of this is super good. I love the color Green Goddess. That's beautiful. I even love the color Kale Dip. This is super pretty. And even Farmer's Market, that's like a icy type of blue color. Icy type of green blue. And that is just super pretty. I'm definitely keeping this palette. Then we have the Mandalorian palette. And this is what the palette looks like. This is one of my favorite grungy palettes. Also, my favorite neutral palette. I did rank my neutral palettes, and this definitely came up there. I just love this so much. I love the color Clan of Two. This is my favorite. I'm just going to go ahead and swatch it for you guys and show you. So this is what it looks like swatched. It is a brown to blue type of shimmer, but it's just absolutely stunning, and I love this. I am definitely not going to get rid of this. Then we have the Hide Tide palette, and I feel like this palette is definitely underrated. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this palette, but this is one of my favorite blue palettes. It has very beautiful blues. It has this Most Sea blue, which this one is also super stunning. The quality of this palette is really good. Just look at that. That is beautiful. This palette is definitely staying. Next, we have Twist of Slate. And if you've been here with me on my channel, you know I have a love-hate relationship with this. It did not perform good at all when I used it. Now, I did figure something out. I was going to go ahead and declutter this, but I've come to realize the only thing I don't like about this palette is the mattes. The mattes are so patchy and just did not work at all. But the shimmers, on the other hand, I actually like. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put the shimmers in a Z palette and just get rid of the mattes. Now, we do have a cream right here. It's alright. It's dried out, so it doesn't really perform that good. But let me tell you, the shimmer is really nice. Just the mattes, I'm not a fond of. So I'm going to go ahead and pot these and get rid of these. Next, we have Set in Stone. And I really love this palette. This is one of my favorite neutral palettes as well. We have the mattes, we have the shimmers, and the shimmers are to die for. These are really, really good. I am in love with these shimmers. Colourpop did such a good job with this palette. We also do have a cream in this one too. It is dried out, but I'm not getting rid of this at all. Then we have Play It Cool, and this is what the palette looks like. This is also so good. I'm in love with this palette. We have the really good shimmers. We do have a cream right here, also dried out. And then we have the mattes. And this palette, I'm never getting rid of either. Then we have Winnie the Pooh palette, Sweet As Can Be. And when I first used this palette, I wasn't a big fan of it. But I did just use it recently. And let me tell you, I'm in love with this palette again. I love Winnie the Pooh, so that is why I got this. I wanted to actually get those lip scrubs the honey little lip thing, but it was sold out by the time I got it and haven't gotten it since. But this is such a good palette. I'm in love with this. As I said, I wasn't in love at first, but I just used it again and I really like this palette, so I'm definitely keeping this. Like, the quality of this is so good. I love the shimmers. I love this shimmer right here, Honey Tree. Like, it is so gorgeous. It is a blue mint type of shimmer, and the quality just performs really good. Then we have the Swords palette, and this is what the palette looks like. This is in my face palettes just because I really use this black right here as an eyeliner. But overall, the quality of this is super good. And I love this packaging. Like, look at this. It's so adorable. These right here are Super Shock marble type of colors. And I just love this. And this silver right here, this is super good also. This is one of my favorite silvers in my collection. As you see, it's just so beautiful. Colourpop did such a good job with this collection, and I am definitely keeping this in my collection. Next we have On a Whimsy, and this is what the palette looks like. I really enjoy this palette. I feel like the quality is actually not that bad. I love the shade Cold Drink right here. This is really beautiful. It's a really beautiful blue. This is like one of my favorite type of blues that are actually like my favorite color, to be honest. I love teal so much. That's my favorite color. And the mattes are really nice. The shimmers are really nice. And this is definitely not going anywhere. Next, we have the Control Alt Glam palette. And this is what the palette looks like. I really like this palette. Now, we do have a pressed glitter in here, but it's more of that fine pressed glitter. So it's not chunky at all. And I didn't really know it was a pressed glitter. Now, I'm pretty sure it's a pressed glitter just because it feels like a pressed glitter. But as you see, it is not chunky at all. I'm in love with the color story. I knew I wanted to get this palette from the start. I feel like it is such a good palette. The collaborator did such a good job, and I'm definitely keeping this palette. And then lastly, from the category from Colourpop, we have the Daisy Does It palette. And this is one of my favorite Colourpop palettes. The quality is so good. And I feel like this is so underrated too. It is really not talked about. But we have the Super Shocks. In the Super Shock, as you see, I have a really nice dent in there. We also have this Super Shock. And the color story is actually really good. It is a neutral, but with the pop of like a little bit of color. Overall, the quality of this, just really nice, and I'm definitely keeping this in my collection. So the grand total of palettes that we got rid of is 14, which is a lot more than I thought I was going to get rid of, and I just feel really proud. Now, the two that were the maybes, which is the Laura Lee and the In My Element, I decided, yes, to get rid of these. I just want to thank everybody for watching this video, and if you like this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and I will be back with a lot more makeup content. Till then, stay beautiful, stay healthy, and stay safe. Bye.